The core problem of using machine learning in quantitative finance is that standard reinforcement learning agents optimize for risk-neutral, average performance. We see this distinctly in equity volatility hedging books, such as SPX VIX portfolios. The SPX and VIX represent the Standard & Poor's 500 index and its corresponding volatility index. In these environments, looking competitive on average means nothing if the agent cannot survive a rare, severe volatility spike. A single left tail event, a flash crash, or a sudden liquidity drought will wipe out a firm's economic capital, regardless of its expected return over the previous 10,000 simulated episodes. For derivatives hedging, an AI's survival depends entirely on how it handles the extreme margins, not the mean. This dynamic forms a strict regulatory barrier. Risk managers and compliance officers categorically reject standard deep hedgers. The rejection stems from the fact that traditional safe reinforcement learning only enforces market constraints asymptotically, or on average over time. That approach leaves residual violation risk during regime shifts, creating windows where the agent can easily breach strict leverage caps or short sale limits. The definitive solution is the tail-safe framework. This framework utilizes a two-part hybrid architecture. It couples risk-sensitive distributional reinforcement learning to shape the statistical tail with a control barrier function, or CBF, to guarantee statewise safety. A control barrier function is a mathematical tool from control theory used to guarantee a system stays within a defined safe operating region. True AI deployment in finance requires this specific separation. We must divorce stochastic learning from deterministic constraint filtering. The first layer of this architecture is the learner. To build it, we have to completely discard the standard expected reward objective. We replace it with an implicit quantile network, or IQN. An IQN is a neural network architecture that predicts a full distribution of outcomes rather than a single average value. Instead of mapping the current market state to a single expected return, the IQN maps it to a full cumulative distribution function of potential returns. Once we have that full curve, we apply a highly specific optimization target, conditional value at risk, or CVAR. CVAR is defined as the conditional mean of losses strictly beyond a predefined confidence threshold, denoted as alpha. When we map CVAR onto our probability curve, we ignore the bulk of the distribution and isolate only the extreme left margin. Shifting the objective from the center of the curve directly to the CVAR tail reorients the AI to prioritize survival over maximum average profit. Optimizing for the tail introduces a critical mathematical bottleneck for the learner. When the alpha threshold is extremely small, standard training methods break down. Uniform quantile sampling rarely generates data points that actually land inside a tight 1 to 5% tail. This severe lack of relevant data causes massive estimator variance, resulting in policy churn and erratic, unstable trading behavior. Theorem 3 of the tail-safe framework solves this using temperature-tilted sampling. By applying an exponential decay function, the system forces the sampling process to concentrate precisely where it matters most. To maintain stability, the learner relies on a tail coverage controller utilizing a discrete PID loop. A PID loop is a standard feedback mechanism that continuously calculates an error value and applies a correction to keep a process on target. This specific controller tracks a target effective tail mass, dynamically adjusting the sampling temperature as the alpha schedule tightens over the training period. This mechanism bounds the estimation error and allows the proximal policy optimization algorithm to update smoothly without collapsing. Proximal policy optimization is a method that restricts how much the AI's policy can change in a single step to ensure stable learning. Without dynamic sampling control, deep tail risks remain mathematically invisible to the AI. The PID controller is the anchor that makes risk-sensitive learning possible. Even a perfectly stabilized policy will occasionally propose mathematically unsafe trades due to execution frictions, like spread and limit order book latency. To catch these errors, we pass the proposed actions through the second architectural layer, the discrete time control barrier function. This layer enforces strict financial constraints, including inventory rate limits, sign consistency gates, and ellipsoidal no-trade bands. A no-trade band is an acceptable margin of exposure error where the agent is restricted from trading to avoid unnecessary transaction costs. If the AI's nominal action violates any of these predefined boundaries, the system halts the trade and solves a convex quadratic program, or QP. According to Proposition 1 of the framework, this QP calculates a minimal deviation projection. In practical terms, the filter mathematically computes the closest possible safe action to the AI's original proposal. Theorem 1 guarantees that as long as the QP is feasible with zero slack, the safe set is forward invariant. Zero slack means the calculation requires no penalty overrides to find a valid solution. This proves that the hard constraints are strictly preserved at every single time step, with no exceptions. The filter acts as an impenetrable mathematical shield, confidently converting probabilistic AI guesses into perfectly deterministically safe execution. We test this architecture empirically using an arbitrage-free microstructure-aware synthetic market generator, passing from an SSVI surface into Dupere local volatility. SSVI and Dupere are mathematical models used together to simulate realistic arbitrage-free options pricing environments. This histogram compares the profit and loss of tail-safe against a standard baseline. Notice the blue baseline stretching deep into the negative left tail. Isolating the orange tail-safe data, we see how the new objective heavily truncates extreme negative outcomes. This empirical cumulative distribution function chart illustrates that tail reduction does not destroy the agent's average performance. The central mass and upper percentiles of the tail-safe curve track almost identically to the baseline. The architecture achieves a dual victory, shifting the deep left tail rightwards while maintaining central mass returns, all while executing with exactly zero hard constraint violations. The empirical data validates the theoretical architecture. Extreme risk can be decoupled from expected performance. The ultimate requirement for AI deployment in finance is model risk governance and regulatory compliance, specifically standards like SR 11.7. SR 11.7 is the U.S. Federal Reserve's primary guidance on model risk management. The mathematical structure of the safety filter solves the AI black box problem directly. Because the safety layer is a convex optimization problem, it inherently outputs exact dual variables alongside its active constraint sets. These dual variables are known as KKT multipliers, and they measure exactly how much a specific constraint restricts the optimization solution. These variables provide a mathematically exact, irrefutable audit trail for why the system overrode an AI's proposed action. Standard penalty-based reinforcement learning simply outputs a modified number without explanation. The tail-safe framework generates a structured, human-readable rationale. It provides risk managers with actionable telemetry, including tightness, rate utilization, and gate scores, allowing them to pinpoint market bottlenecks instantly. The tail-safe framework proves that quantitative finance does not have to choose between the alpha generation of deep reinforcement learning and the rigorous safety of regulatory governance. Both can and must coexist.